Hello again. In this video I'm going to talk about the serial control for ATM. This is the basic unit. It has the optional tally, which we won't be talking about at the moment, but I'm just basically going to discuss the setup or how the unit can be set up for different functions. As you will see, the USB that's supplying the power is actually coming from a computer at the moment, and by doing so I can actually use it as a serial port on the computer, which I will make available all the drivers and the program to do that. But as you can see up here, this is the serial port displaying the basic status. There are a few menu items. I can actually go just type in question mark, and these are the different functions you can do. Question mark was what we just did. You can change the ME, so you can use ME1 or ME2. I'm currently using I have a 2ME 2K or 1080i switcher, the original one. You can adjust the LED brightness on the front of the unit. You can display the system, meaning all the parameters that are set. You can actually enter button names. You actually enter the button names using the serial connector, the serial interface over the USB, so you can set them to any names you want. These don't change the names on the ATEM. This is just the local names. You can change what sources are available on the buttons, and you can actually turn the toggle. You can toggle the display on and off. You can see it in the bottom here, it's turned on at the moment, so every time you change the source it'll change. I'll just say change the source here. It'll actually change the name on the currently on the program on the preview row. If I go to the preview row and change the name, you'll see it changes on there as well. You can also do I'm just reading this here. These are just technical things for testing or resetting the LCD if it gets confused, and test LED. I don't know what that does, but that's there. So basically, here we have the basic unit. I'm just going to put the phone, the camera in the. So as I said, here's our program and here's our preview row. Now on the ATEM, which I have up here, I can this is the software control panel. I can change the inputs over here, and as I change them over here, you'll see that they are changing over here. That's the program row changing, and this is the preview row. Well, preview row changing there, and of course, if you just do a transition or a transition between the same source, just do a transition, you'll see that they change the sources change at the end of the transition. So that's basically showing that the status is getting updated. So I'm just going to reposition the phone here, and of course, as I change the buttons here, you can see that they're changing here, and same with the preview row. Now this is actually set up that button 1 is actually black and button 10 is colour background. It's what we're kind of stuck with at the moment. I'm experimenting with if there's any other ways of changing the changing those inputs on the ATEM, but you can actually reallocate any of these buttons to select any of the inputs that are available on the ATEM through the serial control. So I'll just again show you changing the buttons. There's just selecting black, and then they're just going through the different cameras. Oh, I've got an input that's not allocated correctly up here. I will quickly go and fix that. Preferences. You see I've got an input over here, so let's make that camera 1. There you go. And so as I just go through the sources again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and of course if I do it with a preview row, there's the same thing happening here. So if I just go 9, so input 9, input 10, which is color background. Here's our preview, and I'm just going to hit an auto. There's a wipe, and there's the cut. I'm doing this all on the controller. There's a cut, and now it's using these buttons here. Now I'm going to do a transition, which is here. You can see as I do the transition. Transition is that's the manual transition is happening here, and of course there it is happening up there. On the basic serial controller, we don't have the transitions here, mix, dip, whatever. But when you can actually get them as an option, which is available on. Just go and grab one of these ones from here. You can see there's the extra buttons on there. But this is the very basic unit. Now, what I wanted to show you here is the way we set up certain functions, and there are 20 available setups, which I am just looking them up now. And to get to the setup mode, there's a reset button on the side. Let's just have a look here. Here's a reset button on the side. Not reset, sorry, that's a shift button. If you quickly press the shift button, I'm just going to put this back here again. If you quickly press the shift button, oh, hang on, we've fallen off our perch. There we go. It will enter into a setup mode, and I'm just going to do that now. Obviously, I've got two hands free now. I'm going to just quickly press the setup button, and what it does, it allows the 10 program rows, sorry, 10 program buttons give you a choice of 20 different menu items, and this is all. This will be on a document that you'll be able to read. I'm going to make it a PDF so you can put it on your mobile phone and you can just quickly reference to it. But basically, if I want to go to menu item 1, I just press that. Now, this is our menu item. If it's flashing, it means it's 11 to 20. If it's not flashing, it means it's 1 to 10. And the bottom, the preview row tells you what the value is of that menu item. Now, menu item number 1 tells you what M&E row you're using, and as you can see here, we're using ME row 1. If I go and select ME row 2, and I'm going to again press the shift button, will take us out of setup. And now, if we look at there it is there. As I'm switching now, you can see it's actually switching ME2. And of course, it's all functions now on the unit, on the serial controller, are now being referenced by ME2. Now, even if I start selecting sources on ME2, you can see even those sources are being reflected. Oh, there we go. Back over on the serial controller. Now, what this basically gives you the ability to do is it allows you to use this device, the serial controller, even the basic unit, to control ME2 while you are using your main hardware panel to control ME1. So that gives you a second level of control, or a different level of control. And let me just put this back in here again. And we can go back to setup mode here. I'm just going to get into setup mode, you just quickly press the shift button. And you can see now it's gone back to setup position number 1, or menu item number 1. And we got flashing telling we're in setup mode. And and now we can go back to select ME1. No other buttons are available on setting the MEs, just ME1 or ME2. Now the second menu item is you can select the keyer. So you can select keyer 1 or keyer 2. I've got defaulting to keyer 1 at the moment, but that'll allow us keyer 2. And I don't think the protocol allows for keyer 3, keyer 4. If I find it, I'll include it. And as you can see, I can add all the way up to 10 keys if there were 10 keys available. So that basically means that whatever keyer buttons you're using on the serial controller will affect only that keyer. Position number 3 sets the ME2 keyer. So you can have position 2 is ME1 keyer, position 3 is ME2 keyer, and again you can select keyer 1 or keyer 2. The fourth button is selecting the downstream keyer. I haven't actually got this working yet. I'm not quite sure whether the DSK1 and DSK2 are supported. I know DSK1 is, but if it is, then you can select DSK1 or DSK2 using that button. Button 5. Now these are the interesting ones. Button 5 is for setting the auto transition rate. Now, as you know, you can have a lot of you can have up to what is it, up to 10 seconds of an auto transition rate. Now I've got that limited down to here to I can't remember, but it's about half. But in mode 5, the bottom row is indicating the tens value of the transition rate. Now, if you have a look at the current transition rate of the ATEM, it says it's 1 second now. This is running in PAL mode, which means that that's going to be 25 frames. So by looking at the tens of frames here, you can see we're on 20 something. But if you actually hit the shift button, it'll show you the units. So there it's showing a 5. So it's saying that it's 25 frames. And at any time you can change that. So, and this is only in frames. So let's go to 28 frames. And now if you go up and have a look, we've got that now set to 1 second and 3 frames, which is 25 plus 3 is 28. And we can actually obviously change that, go up to 40. So that's now 40, hit the button here, 48 frames, and 48 frames is 1 second and 23. I will probably include the ability to go higher than, because this at the moment goes 99 frames is the maximum. 99 frames is the maximum for being able to select it on here, but I might there's another function that I can actually use the cut LED button to add another 0 to our values. And the 0 button here, if I go 0, that actually means now that our first or tens digit is now 0. So with the shift button push and says 9, it means we've only got 9 frames. So if you want to make it a 6 frame dissolve, well, you want to go 0 with the shift button and then 6. That gives you 6 frames. And to prove it, there it is down there, 6 frames. The next menu item here, let me just frame it up a bit. Menu item number 6. This does the same as we did just a moment ago, but this just does the downstream key rate. And again, you've got the tens, and if you hold your finger on the shift button, shows you the units. You can see that's also set for 25 frames. Button 7 is the fade to black rate. exactly the same again. You can set the fade to black rate using the 10s and the units. I'm racing through all this. Button 8. What this does is it disables or enables our shift button on the side. There are some functions that you can do with the controller that requires a shift button. I won't go into them at the moment. So if you accidentally hit the shift button, then you can disable that by turning it on. Right now it says it's on. Position 2 turns it off, disables it. Menu item number 9. What this does is, if you've got a display, it'll in normal operation, as you change inputs on the program and preview, the input source names will show on the display. You can disable that, especially if you're using the display for doing on-air changes of certain things. You can actually use, even on the basic panel, you can do all sorts of other controls using the display in the menu and set an arrow buttons on the display. I'll cover that in a separate video. Position 10. This does the same thing. It turns on and off the COM port. The USB port names get sent to the USB port. If you don't want them being sent there, you can turn it off. I won't go into that at the moment. Now, to get to menu items 11 to 20, you've got to hold your finger on the shift button and then select it. Now you can see it's flashing, which means that it's actually in menu item number 11. And menu item 11, again, you can activate or deactivate the T bar, and the reason for that is that if you've got the serial controller sitting there as a backup switcher and you don't want somebody to accidentally hit the T bar, you can disable the T bar so that it's not going to cause a problem. And just as a matter of interest, in normal operation, the T bar is always disabled when you first turn it on, and to enable it, you just make sure it's all the way down at the bottom, and then it'll detect that it's actually at the bottom, and it will then enable the T bar. So then you can then use normal T bar operation on it. And of course, if it will take up the position of where the current fader is. Function number 12. What this does, I have to hold shift on that. Function 12. What this does, it gives you the ability to change the intensity of the LEDs, and I can you can see they're getting brighter as I increase the value. Now that's value 9, and the maximum value is 15. That's value 0. These, if you want them even darker, there's a little adjustment on the side over here, a little trim pot. You can actually crank down your lowest level and then have it increase from that. Again, more on that in another video. And if you press the cut button, it'll then adds 10 to the value. So what am I doing here? Yeah, so you can see it's getting the absolute, that's the maximum brightness you can get. It's hurting my eyes. And you can see that's with the cut on. If I turn the cut off, it'll only go to value 5, whereas that adds 10. That's only value 15. And at the moment I'm just going to leave it at the lowest so it doesn't burn my eyes out. Okay, so menu item 13. I'm reading the this sets the button cross points. So I won't go into that at the moment. What you can do is you can select the button and then select the cross point that you want to allocate to that button. So it doesn't always have to follow the ATM's buttons. You can actually reallocate them here. There's going to be a separate video on that. The same for 14. It does the same thing, but with the key bus buttons. not applicable with the basic unit, doesn't have key bus. But with the deluxe version, which has the key bus, it'll do the same. Now, position 15, this is a wildcard, this one. This does the same thing for the aux bus, but I haven't yet been able to work out whether the ATEM has extended aux bus control to its serial port. If they do, I'm there ready for it, and if it's already there and it's not documented, I will include it. Now, positions, I think 16, 17 and 18 and 19 aren't yet allocated, but I'm sure there'll be things that I'll need to do with it. And system, menu item 20 gives you the ability to reset. I'm just reading the instructions here. Just to prove that I'll make sure this is what I'm reading. So you can see here 20 system reset. I won't go into that at the moment either because it's a little bit advanced, but it's for just general setting up purposes. So basically, to come out of menu item, you just or just back to normal operation, you just a quick press on the shift button, and we're all restored back to normal. So that's basically the using the setup mode when you don't have a display. You probably didn't see it at the time, but because I didn't show it to you. But up here, I'll just go back into setup mode again. Oh, here we go up here. Quick press of the button, then you'll see it always remembers the last setup item that you had. I'm just going to select, just go through and set the different. That's the setting which ME, and if I change it, you can see it shows up here. I mean, it's not always practical for you to have a computer with running a serial port just to see this. You don't really need it, but it gives you reassurance if you've got a computer sitting there, especially if you've got a computer that's sitting there supplying the power. And if it's not doing anything else, you can have it sitting there running a serial port. Anyhow, there's a lot more videos coming up, and I hope that's kind of giving you a kind of an insight for it. Thank you and goodbye.